This is an Easter Island head that represents all the wisdom and the wizards of the world. And the wizard is asking, how come after all my stories, the world is not living happily ever after? He's crying because he sees so much destruction around the world. And he's crying, and along with him we are crying because the world is seeing a lot of conflicts, be that in Gaza, be that in Ukraine, be that in America with conflicts, political conflicts. And the world doesn't have an answer. There is no help. All the good paradigms that the wizard has created are creating more conflict and resolution. And it is at this point that I, as a kid who experienced the Holocaust and the Second World War, I studied and I developed a better understanding of psychology as a science of conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is what is happening in every story, but stories have different ways of resolving conflict. And so my work is about understanding the creative process as a scientific phenomenon of resolving conflict, as the universal paradigm, as what is universal in all stories, the plot of stories. The formal theory is that the mind is operating predictably according to some formal operations. Now, what is formal operations? Thinking of a scale and how there are some operations restoring the balance of the trays of a scale. And the formal operations are a formula of identity, which means putting a weight on a tray, and balancing the trays with three operations: reciprocity, which means moving from passivity to activity; negation, which means moving from antagonism to cooperation; and correlation, that means moving from alienation to mutual respect. So the formal theory has adopted these three formal operations, restoring the balance of the trays of a scale, to understand how the mind works, restoring a sense of self and equilibrium, a sense of tranquility. So when the pendulum is moved back and forth, charged with emotions and energy, we have a phenomenon of science, which is the simple harmonic motion. And the emotions are the energetic move away from a position of rest. So imagine putting that energy on a tray, and the tray is the mind who has to restore the balance. So formal operations and the simple harmonic motion are two phenomena of science that are the software of the mind. I bought in crazy with passion of developing here a center for the study of behavior. This is a magical place that I was able to establish as the bastion of conflict resolution. I happen to be a combination of two cultures. I am a Jewish Greek. I am very proud of both my cultural heritages, and I think it is in my genes. So I would like to kind of pay tribute to my cultural and genetic history. I come from a Jewish community that has been in Greece for 2,000 years. And so my genetic endowment is bastardized, Greek and Jewish. And my thinking has been in the same way, challenging the value system of religion. And so my curiosity about history and Judaism got me to also look at Greek history and Greek drama and Greek gods and understanding conflict in the families and in Greek religion, and how there was a dynamic of family relations that created the Oedipal dynamics that Freud talked about. And my explanation for the Oedipal dynamics was the riddle of the Sphinx that needed a new version. And my riddle of the Sphinx was Oedipus having a branch of olive tree to the Sphinx and says, let's be friends. Let us be partners. I want you to take care of my sheep rather than telling you the truth and seeing you jump off the cliff. So the idea was also challenging Freud. He missed out understanding the unconscious. I understand it as conflict resolution. He understood it as creating conflict. If you have here some political systems, psychological systems, cultural systems, and my challenge has been reconciling faith and reason. One of the challenges that we have is being able to understand morality, religions, and understand why you have so many different religions. And psychology is agnostic. Psychology believes in the brain and drugs, in behavior modification, but doesn't understand that a part of real psychology is morality. And that is the need for resolving conflict that is innate. And religions discovered that psychology. Religions are psychological theories. The creative process is a phenomenon that a lot of people have pondered on, but without having a clear scientific interpretation, and recognizing that all stories have a moral. And where is this coming from? All stories have a structure. Where is this coming from? And this is my answer to that. Emotions are energy, and the unconscious is a homeostatic phenomenon that keeps the energy low. It transforms conflict, which is psychic energy, conflict, discomfort, into social adjustment, attitude change, which is conflict resolution. We have to look at the way our brain manifests itself in creating our stories. And so the psychological assessment that I developed identifies these two components of the unconscious. One is the 6 roles, the emotions, stress response, anxiety defense, reversal, compromise, with creativity exercises that are tapping to each one of the emotions. So in the psychological assessment that I have developed, the way to understand conflict is remembering memories of conflict in your childhood, in adolescence, in adult, and recognizing a pattern of emotional distress, unresolved conflict, unresolved tension, energy. And then continuing from there with another test, which is the mask, which is the response, and seeing the feelings that are behind the mask, creating an animal metaphor or fairy tale metaphor to see how a person defends himself. And then finding a dream to show the reversal, this state of mind that unfolds on its own, resolving our conflicts. And then a short story, which represents the compromise, the resolution, which usually presents the conscious effort of a person to resolve. So this is the principles of a new psychology, which brings in new diagnostic categories, and it brings new principles of resolution. So a therapist is not that important if you use the assessment which helps the person to find out about himself, herself, as how his emotions are organized resolving conflict, and what is his relational modality, if he's a dominant person or if he's a submissive person. And because each one of these alternatives creates a different set of emotions. Like a very dominant person is very scared, very paranoid, being afraid of others, not trusting others. And that is the problem of dominant people. They're very good leaders, but at the same time they're paying a price for that. The submissive people hold their feelings in, so they have a different set of problems. They have either depression, anxiety, or hostility. And so they have to work on their submissiveness, become more assertive. So the program that I have developed is called Power Management. The key issue in therapy is for a person to learn his wellness diagnosis. And everybody has a personality type. And it is very important to know if you're dominant or submissive, because you have two different sets of emotions generated in your mind and different sets of pathologies. One of the things that helps to understand the formal theory, the structure of the deck of cards. I see the deck of cards as presenting the template of the unconscious. The 4 suits are 4 stories of 4 cultures, 4 ways of resolving conflict differently. The 4 signs that we have in the deck of cards, the spade, the club, the diamond, and the heart, representing symbolism of conflict, ways of resolving conflict according to the spade, which is an upside-down heart, which is black and has a poke, is really the heart suffering. And the heart is evolving towards the club, black, expanded, dominant antagonism. So submissive antagonism becomes dominant antagonism. That is the symbolism of black. Then we have the diamond as submissive cooperation, and then we have the heart as dominant cooperation. So these are the four suits that I have adopted as creating or picking up stories of the different cultures. And I have developed a game which I call Moral Monopoly, which presents the evolution of religions as moral monopolies, evolving predictably from matriarchy, submissive antagonism, to dominant antagonism, father killing a son or son killing a father, to going to India, where you have the idea of Ganesh, a child being restored to life after a father decapitates him or gives an elephant yam. And then you come to Judea, where a father wants to sacrifice his son to test him out, but they love each other. And the mother encourages the son to respect the father. So you have the evolution from the spade to the heart in this template of stories. My books evolved from understanding cultures and seeing the formal operations, the energy, and the system of creativity. And I wrote the conflict analysis formal theory and conflict analysis training, the workbook that has the assessment. And from there, that was the first phase. The second phase was validations. And that is where I did the book of the museum exhibits, all the exhibits that I have here. And I called it Science Stealing the Fire of the Gods. That is what Prometheus did, but healing the world, is giving the fire to the mortals. And that is where I have a big fire here at the Wilburton. And then I wrote two books about case studies, utilizing creativity for self-discovery, showing how the focus of therapy is relational modalities rather than illness, wellness, and how that is helping people and also creating a great record to see the outcome evolving predictably, resolving conflict, improving communication. So dominant people recognizing the fire that's inside of them, and submissive people recognizing that they have no fire inside. And the final accomplishment, the final book, is creating a book which is called Moral Science Primer. And this is the book where I say we have a validation of the theory that presents evidence that psychology is a science of conflict resolution. Artificial intelligence is at odds in terms of understanding what to do with the intelligence. It's clever, but it's not wise. And the problem is that artificial intelligence doesn't have the capacity for introspection, for analysis of creativity. And so this is where we have a beautiful validation of the formal theory by instructing the GPT to analyze stories. And analyzing stories as 6 emotions as a dialectic of conflict resolution, and also identifying the relational modality of the character. Morality is the secret of understanding intelligence in a meaningful way. So my contribution in this domain, which is very important today, is being able to utilize the wisdom of the intelligence as something to interpret metaphors. And I have used it putting the records of patients in therapy and seeing how much more meaningful the statements of the patients are, analyzed by the artificial intelligence. And so I see the formal theory having a contribution in the domain of artificial intelligence technology. Value of this new conceptualization changes psychology and makes it into a science that can be introduced into the classroom and can have an impact of educating people on understanding psychology as a science, understanding oneself, using creativity for self-discovery, and being able to understand also the moral paradigms that we have now as discoveries of science that evolved improving the family with metaphors. But now we can interpret metaphors as paradigms of science. And it is important to share that.